سنقاوم احتلالا ثوريا إيرانيا للقرار السياسي اللبناني.
Good afternoon. It is Friday, December 20th. I'm Yumna Naufal, and these are today's headlines. President Michel Suleiman urges the judiciary not to be swayed by pressure and to do their part to fortify national unity as he praises the newly elected council members. Lebanese forces leader Michel says Christians in the region are not foreign communities and they do not need anyone's protection, minimizing the concerns about the treatment of Christians by hardliners in Syria. And a senior Syrian official says no one can stop embattled President Bashar al-Assad from seeking re-election and that a government team has been formed for peace talks. During today's commemoration of Hassan Laki's assassination, Hezbollah chief Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah said, quote, "The recent regional developments indicate that we have no need for general mobilization. We tell those questioning the resistance, its members and supporters, that they have barely scratched the surface of what we are capable of. Our resistance takes place at battle and not elsewhere. We are proud of martyrdom, whether in combating Israel or Takfiris, or whether they are victims of assassinations. Since taking the path of resistance, we have accepted the fall that martyrs will. Some Lebanese sides had been opposed to the resistance since its inception." He also added that the media is broadcasting a daily flow of lies aimed at tarnishing Hezbollah's image. Nasrallah added that some Hezbollah members, including Lakis and Mournier, work day and night analyzing how to confront Israel. Lebanese and the Jewish state troops went on high alert after Israeli military tried to cut down a tree adjacent to the border fence from the town of Adaise. Uniformed peacekeepers swiftly deployed in the area to calm down both sides and carried out contacts with the Lebanese and Israeli military. The parties agreed to task the UNIFIL to uproot the tree to end the dispute. A similar incident occurred in 2008, prompting Lebanon and Israel to exchange fire in a fierce battle that killed a senior Israeli official, 2 Lebanese soldiers, and 1 journalist. The incident comes days after an Israeli soldier was killed on Sunday in a cross-border shooting. The Lebanese army described the deadly shooting as an individual act by one of the soldiers, noting that it will address the repercussions of the incident in coordination with the UN peacekeeping force. President Michel Suleiman is urging the judiciary not to be swayed by pressure and to do their part to fortify national unity as he praises newly elected council members. Suleiman called on the judiciary not to bow to pressure, adding that there is accountability and there are efforts being made, and the results of which will appear soon enough. He congratulated council head George Jadej as well as newly elected members. Just to remind you, the March 14 bag candidate Jadej was elected as the new head of the Beirut Bar Association last month, beating Michel Aoun's Free Patriotic Movement contender. Suleiman highlighted the importance of the institution's work and its achievements. And he also called for strengthening national unity through adherence to the Bata Declaration, an agreement between rival March 8 and March 14 leaders that calls for neutralizing Lebanon from any regional and international conflict. Lebanese forces leader Michel says Christians in the region are not foreign communities and do not need anyone's protection, minimizing concerns about the treatment of Christians by hardliners in Syria. The Christians in the region are part of the social fabric. Jaja told the conference on the role of them in Lebanon held in Marab. He said the kidnapping of Greek Orthodox nuns by rebels from Syria's Marta'la convent in Ma'lula was a rude act. He said Lebanese politicians and mainly Christians should take extraordinary action to form delegations to visit the countries that are backing the rebels in Syria and stop the attack on the Christian community. But without mentioning any of them, he ridiculed the FPM officials, saying some politicians are making a huge drama about Ma'lula in an attempt to hint that the conflict in Syria is just about Christians. Human Rights Watch is stressing that Lebanese authorities need to step up their action regarding ongoing violence in the northern city of Tripoli and is urging them to arrest gunmen and seize their weapons. The New York-based watchdog also said authorities should better protect the Tripoli neighborhood of Jabal Muhsin, where the minority Alawites are increasingly coming under attack by Sunni gunmen. 2 separate clashes in Tripoli earlier this week have disrupted the fragile peace in the city despite heavy army deployment. HRW said in its report that sectarian tensions between the Alawite Jabal Muhsin neighborhood and surrounding Sunni neighborhoods have led to increasing targeted attacks against Alawites in the northern city of Tripoli. Entrepreneurship is one of the pillars of economic growth and social development, according to U.S. Ambassador to Lebanon, David Hale. During his visit to Hagazyan University, he noted that entrepreneurship has become a buzzword lately, telling students during the trip to follow up on the recipients of the American-funded scholarship program. Entrepreneurship is not a fashion trend. It is one of the pillars of economic growth and social development. It helps in creating jobs, advancing innovation, and keeping the economy vibrant. The U.S. financially supports the school's University Scholarship Program, which has benefited 64 students since it was established in 2010. The merit-based scholarship is awarded to students from public school in 22 different districts of Lebanon. Hale said the goal of the scholarship program was to promote a balance between social responsibility and entrepreneurship, adding that Lebanese students have numerous role models for inspiration. Fitch, the rating agency, downgraded Lebanon's long-term foreign and local currency issuer default rating, known as IDR, to negative, citing political uncertainties, spillovers from the Syrian conflict on economic performance, and slow growth prospects. The report says that Lebanon's outlook was downgraded to negative from stable. Fitch said that the country's long-term foreign and local currency issuer default ratings have been affirmed at B. The issue ratings on Lebanon's senior and secured foreign and local currency bonds also at B, and the short-term foreign currency IDR at B as well. The ratings agency said that the involvement of Hezbollah and Sunni groups in the Syrian conflict has increased sectarian tensions domestically. The firm also said that the ever-rising number of refugees is adding tension and strains on the country's economy, especially on infrastructure and public institutions. A senior Syrian official says no one can stop embattled President Bashar al-Assad from seeking re-election and that a government team has been formed for peace talks. Nobody has the right to interfere and say he must run or should not run, Deputy Foreign Minister Faisal Muqdad said shortly after Russia criticized statements that he wanted to seek another term in 2014. Russia earlier issued rare criticism over its ally Assad over the presidential election scheduled for next year. Deputy Foreign Minister Michel said Assad and all parties should steer clear of stoking tensions ahead of the peace talks planned for Switzerland in January, aimed at ending the conflict raging in Syria since 2011. Now, while the opposition insists on Assad's ouster, 3 years into a brutal war that has killed an estimated 126,000 people, the Syrian regime has repeatedly said he would run it in 2014. UN Arab League envoy Lakhdar Brahimi is holding fresh talks with U.S. and Russian negotiators as they seek to smooth the way to a January peace conference on Syria. The veteran Mediators' intensive shuttle diplomacy between Geneva, the Middle East, and the capitals of the world last month helped finally set January 22 as the start date for talks in Switzerland. On the eve of Friday's meeting, Brahimi underscored that the Syrians themselves would have to drive the talks between the government and the rebels. Brahimi and Jeffrey Feltman, the UN's political affairs chief, are to meet with Russian Deputy Foreign Ministers Mikhail Bogdanov and Gennady Gatilov and senior U.S. Department official Wendy Sherman. Coming up next, some of America's most talented music artists come together to perform for the 25th annual Christmas in Washington event. Stay with us. Welcome back. At least 2 UN peacekeepers from India have been killed in an attack on a United Nations base in South Sudan. The UN says attackers from the country's second largest ethnic group forced their way into the Akobo base in conflict-racked Jonglei state on Thursday, pursuing civilians from a rival ethnic group who had taken refuge there. India's UN envoy said earlier that 3 peacekeepers were killed. Contact with the base was lost after the assault, and UN deputy spokesman Farhan Haq said the fate of more than 30 ethnic Dinka civilians sheltering at the base was still unknown. A statement said UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon was appalled to learn of the attack. U.S. President Barack Obama, who earlier announced he had deployed 45 troops to the violence-racked country on Wednesday to protect U.S. personnel and interests, warned that recent fighting threatens to plunge South Sudan back into the dark days of its past. Michel Hodorkovsky, the former oil magnate and a prominent Kremlin critic, has been released from jail in the wake of a decree issued by Russian President Vladimir Putin, pardoning him after spending more than a decade behind bars for embezzlement, fraud, and tax evasion. The Russian president had revealed his decision to pardon Hodorkovsky during his annual press conference on Thursday, saying the former head of oil giant Yukos had requested a pardon because his mother was ill. Hodorkovsky, who is 50 years old, used his estimated fortune of $20 billion to support communist and liberal opposition to Putin prior to his arrest in 2003 when he was snatched off his corporate jet by special security forces. He and his business partner Platon Lebedev were convicted of fraud and tax evasion in 2005. Analysts viewed the pardon as a measure aimed at easing international criticism of Russia's human rights record ahead of February's Winter Olympics in the city of Sochi. Pope Francis is to make a brief visit to Israel and the Palestinian territories from May 25th, his first to the Holy Land, according to Israeli newspaper Yediot Aharonot. According to the top-selling daily, which published what it said was a preliminary papal program, Israeli authorities are unhappy with the brevity of the 48-hour visit and the fact that the prelate will not celebrate Mass in Israel, but in the West Bank city of Bethlehem, Christ's traditional birthplace. Vatican spokesman Father Federico Lombardi said he could not comment on travel plans. A trip could be announced by the Vatican in the weeks following Christmas, an official said, on condition of anonymity. Yediot said that a Vatican delegation made a preparatory visit to Israel this week. He would visit Christian and Jewish holy sites and the Yad Vashem Holocaust in Jerusalem, but would not go to the northern Israeli Arab city of Nazareth or other sites in the Galilee region. Some of America's most talented music artists came together last night to perform for the 25th annual Christmas in Washington event. The night of Yuletide festivities was hosted by Oscar nominee, 3-time Emmy and Tony Award winner Hugh Jackman. The performances came from the Backstreet Boys, Sheryl Crow, Anna Kendrick, and more artists such as Janelle Monáe. The concert also featured a special guest appearance from NBA Hall of Fame and analyst for TNT's Inside the NBA, Charles Barkley. Christmas in Washington event is in its 32nd year. We'll be counting down the days till Christmas time. Now, on that note, I'm going to end our bulletin for today and remind you of our top stories. President Michel Suleiman urges the judiciary not to be swayed by pressure and to do their part to fortify national unity as he praises the newly elected council members. Lebanese forces leader Samir Jaja says Christians in the region are not foreign communities and they do not need anyone's protection, trying to minimize the concerns about the treatment of Christians by hardliners in Syria. And a senior Syrian official says no one can stop President Bashar al-Assad from seeking re-election in 2014 and that a government team has been formed for peace talks in Geneva next month. Well, Those are your Friday headlines live on Future Television in Beirut. I'm Yumna Naufal, wishing you a great weekend. Have a good one.
وسنقاوم احتلالا ثوريا إيرانيا للقرار السياسي اللبناني.